Catch if Carl had COVID or was exposed to COVID.
There's more than enough because
Hopefully he didn't have it.
Everyone is zooming.
Oh,
Unfortunately, I also have COVID.
no.
Seems like it's going around.
we appreciate you staying home then.
Yeah, how are you feeling? You look okay. No,
So do we have a quorum? Do we need 4 or 5? Is it majority or just half? For
How many do we have? 8?
8.
I think what 4 would do, but I'm not sure.
Oh, I don't know what the bylaws say.
Rebecca, would you know? You seem to
I'm not sure on that one. I think it's
Well-
usually 5, but
write a majority. Well, Carl's supposed to sign up.
yeah, so hopefully-
And Marcus is a voting member.
No, I know. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So you have, so as soon as we get one more. we
Hey,
need-
Yeah.
here we go. You have
Oh,
your quorum.
good, Jim's.
Okay, great.
Cool.
You doing? Good. You look familiar, do I know you?
Nice.
Okay. You started?
Yep, we're all.
Okay, I call this meeting to order. We have a quorum of 5 of 8 of committee members. Anyone adding anything to the agenda? No? Okay.
I made a general survey for some of the things that we've talked about in past meetings, but I'm not sure that that needs to necessarily be an agenda item. I know
One
that
second,
we-
Ruben. I can't hear you.
Let me make sure all my stuff is on.
Not you, it's us.
It's us.
Can you say something, Rubens?
I did. I was just saying, I don't know if it needs to be added to the agenda. I know that we had something on there for a survey, but I just kind of roughed in a basic survey on some of the things we discussed in past meetings. So I'm not sure if you need to carve out time to take a peek at that or if that,
It's one.
can you guys hear me?
Try again, Ruben.
Hello.
Yes, okay, good.
All right.
Okay, what were you saying?
I was saying I'm not sure if it needs to be added to the schedule, but I know in the past we talked about putting together a survey to get some feedback on some of the concepts that we have. I roughed in one through SurveyMonkey that I attached a link for here. I'm not sure that you need to add that to the schedule or if it's something that's already on there.
Yeah, we'll circle back to that a little bit later. There's a good place to address it. Thank you. Okay, there's no citizens here. Yeah, okay, so motion to approve both sets of minutes from last time. Any changes, adjustments to the minutes? Okay, all good, great. Thanks, Beck.
Yeah.
Okay. What?
Yeah, somebody else.
So, our two, hi, Susan. Two items today. One, very briefly about the Trails Grant application, which is due in June. Kate prepared it last time. Kate will be preparing and updating it this time. Carl has submitted comments. He previously worked with Kate on it before. Anyone have additional comments after having read it, or Kate, do you have additional questions for anyone here now?
It's the trail grant is the sort of second two pages, Carl's comments and the map that was asked for. I think I was telling Michael earlier that in the grant last time, we included the demolition of the Haas's house, to be able to build a parking lot right there. And, so I'm gonna call the folks tomorrow, who are running the grant. His name is, blanking out his name.
Doug.
It's not Doug this time, it's Doug. Doug has someone helping him with the
Yeah.
Trails grant, anyway. I wanna say it's Alan,
Okay,
Adam.
I know Doug and Matt, those are the two I know.
Anyway, I attended their information session. This does seem like it might fit in. But working on some workarounds for us to be able to possibly take that out of the grant, which I think would make it maybe a little bit more competitive. But also gonna ask them if that's even something they would consider, or not. So that's sort of the biggest substantive change we're looking to make.
And the reason we were including it in the first place is because it's hard to get funding to simply demolish something.
Right.
And they do allow for change, for, you know, creating a accessible area for a trail. And there's a house in the way. So that's the argument. Janet?
Yeah, but my reading of it, that was my reactions. This doesn't sound focused enough. So I was gonna recommend taking that out. Also, it mentions there's other parking, so it's a little confusing. So I think that's probably smart.
Okay.
And maybe use some of that. I didn't look carefully at the budget, but for bridges or the kiosk or, you know, maybe, you know, fleshing out the trail system with some other features.
That was all in there.
Okay.
The money for the bridges and the kiosk were all in there.
Okay, but it's not written in the description, so I didn't see it, so just being more explicit
Add
about
it to the
that.
description.
Yeah, and then the other thing, I totally question the 10-foot wide road. I mean, 5 feet is considered wide, so you can pass with wheelchairs and strollers and stuff, and never have I seen an ADA type trail that's 10 feet wide. And also the soils are the booth-based soils, which are, you have a high water table in the spring. I just wish we could revisit that because it takes away from the feeling of being on a trail. It's really a road. So I don't know if there's any room for discussing.
What was
further.
do you want to just review the logic behind that decision?
Sure. The logical behind it was that EMS asked us to
I know.
make it that
yeah.
wide, and they asked us to make it that wide because if we're inviting folks who are who have needs and who are maybe not the most active and fit individuals to be walking on trails, which we want to encourage them to walk on this trail and get outside, they need to be able to get to them as quickly as possible in an emergency, in case an emergency happens.
But I don't know of a single other trail that does that. You know, it's like Waldeboro's doing its own thing.
The one that Coastal Rivers just built in Demerskata is 10 feet wide. And they did it 10 feet wide. Talking to the director there, Julie and I had a conversation with him, and he said they build it 10 feet wide because they expect that there's going to be ingrowth along the edges a little bit. And so it makes it so that it maintains kind of an 8-foot wide corridor.
Yeah, but there's still, you know, all the state parks, Erickson Field, Belfast.
I'm going to
It's
come back
a
to what you're
huge road.
saying. 1 second, Susan.
I have seen, well, I haven't seen the one in Damerscott actually, but I have seen that a very similar multi-use trail that's ADA accessible in Austin, Texas. And I do get it because that kind of ADA trail has a lot of different users. And I'm not sure if this trail would be exclusively ADA. It's typically
It can actually
multi-use.
be ADA because of one section of slope is a little bit too steep.
Yeah,
So it's
But part of
simply an
it can
accessible.
be.
an
Yeah.
accessible
Right.
yeah.
for our labeling of it, but for the majority of it, it can be ADA.
Yeah.
Right.
And what I've noticed on those trails that have pedestrians, strollers, wheelchairs, sometimes bikes. I don't know if cycling is permitted on this trail.
I think you said you didn't list that as a use.
We didn't list it as a primary use,
I
but
would-
I don't think I don't
Yeah.
think we would discount it.
Yeah, so if it is a multi-use trail with many different modes of ambulation or cycling, people need a wide berth to get around each other. Because some are going faster than others, and I know, I myself have been on a multi-use trail that's too narrow. And it's a little nerve-wracking if something's coming at you And I don't know if there have been collisions in the past, but, and if
So,
it's not the whole, if it's a section
not
that's
the whole
10
thing.
feet,
yeah, it's only a section.
yeah, I
Um,
can see pros and cons of both sides for
Well,
sure.
I'll concede, but I.
Well, but I
just-
want to come back to what you're saying, but first just to say that, I know that Carl brought this up, in his notes that like, if it is for vehicles, a certain kind of surface needs to be added, so we're
Maybe it's
gonna
double
incorporate
engineered.
that into the application if necessary.
Well, we're not making it for vehicles. It's simply, it's a,
Oh, I thought it was actually for a vehicle.
It's
It
wide,
is-
it's wide
it's-
enough to get an ambulance on if we need to.
All right,
As
so an
long as the
ambulance-
ground permits.
Right, is a
Like,
vehicle.
It's a little
right?
different, but every baseball field in our town has a 10-foot gate so that we can get an ambulance on the field if we need to. It's kind of the
Right.
same thing.
right.
I understand. that.
We're not expecting, so we're not building the trail to accommodate vehicles, which would be different surfacing, different building of it up.
Okay,
If-
so
if
one
we
time
brought-
if necessary.
If we brought the ambulance down, we would expect that they would probably do a number on the
Oh,
trail.
okay, I misunderstood that.
And that,
Right.
that we would then have to rebuild the trail. Because we don't necessarily want to build it for ATVs and have that sort of level just in case an ambulance needs to go on at one time. But we want it wide enough so that we can get the ambulance down there,
Okay,
and we would then have to probably do some work on it and some maintenance on it.
but not to like a full road.
Right.
I get the point.
Okay.
Yep, okay. The other thing I would just say to this, and to, what Janet is saying is that, the whole feel of that area of the park, might just be very unique and not necessarily comparable to a trail in a reserve or, a conservation, land. Other parts of the trail on this lot may be closer to the feel of that.
Mhm.
But I almost think that it would behoove us to sort of, okay, so it's gonna be a wider trail, so, and it's through largely an open field-like area. How do we lean into that and say, maybe there's more stuff going on around you in the lawn area, more play features or something like that. So it's actually to say, well, it's wider, slow down, look around, right? So it's gesturing to something about the experience of the space rather than simply an accommodation of a request from EMS. Okay,
I just one comment, and I will go with what the group decides, but to me, what ADA or people that don't have the opportunity to do is get out in the woods. I mean, you can ride on the sidewalk, you can ride in other places on the pavement and walk, traveling through the woods is the piece that doesn't exist for most people. And that's why I feel like that experience is important, but if you
you
want
think
to
that
make.
2 feet is gonna make that difference?
I think it would, I have a driveway that's about 10 feet and it feels really different than the ADA trails I've been on. But maybe not. And also it's grading from a sort of more built park.
Yes, it's a
And
transitional
So I
space.
see that,
Yeah.
but to me, it's a totally different experience than
Yeah.
if someone wants to go for a walk in the woods.
Any other comments about the trail, Grant? Yes, Susan.
Is there space for both, like, what,
For part of the ADA. You
yeah,
mean the-
part of the ADA trail to get into the woods a little bit? I
Yes,
know there's one.
yes, it does go into the woods a little bit. It
Yeah.
does go into fully tree-covered area.
And I
Yep.
just have one other comment.
I have a question
Oh,
too.
well, I think it's good, but I would include one paragraph where it asks for the bigger context that explains the trajectory. You have it in pieces here and there, but from the, well, you don't have to go into the task force for the redevelopment committee, the recommendation from the public in the survey that happened around that time that focused on what you said it focuses on. Maybe mention the school coming up with a name. I mean, just broaden the in community input, and also Mid-Coast Conservancy was involved with the trails from the outset, and I feel like we should encourage or recommend that volunteers are going to help maintain the footpath part.
Mhm.
It's not just public works. So just to give a sense of broader community involvement.
Could you send me just a very simple timeline does something like that exist? The
Yeah, we
timeline,
have the
like,
timeline, which you can see and you can pull out the things, but mostly the task force, the survey. I think having the school is great and worth mentioning.
is the timeline on the Dropbox?
It's on the
or-
It was
website.
in
but
my Dropbox.
I can
Okay.
send it to you too.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, Janet, maybe sending your comments to Kate if there's anything more specific
Yeah, I
that you
could
want to
do
make
that.
sure get through. Sorry, yes, Ruben, I'm not facing you, so thank you for speaking up. What is your
It's all
thought?
good. I just wanted to ask, I mean, the town of Waldeboro lists 11 trail systems currently. Does this ADA feature allow for some
No.
differentiation between the other trails or?
It doesn't exist anywhere else
Yeah.
in our town.
Okay, great.
And the nearest one is 10 miles to the south in Damariscotta and like 30 miles.
Camden has one,
Yeah.
Erickson Field.
Sounds like a great reason to have it.
Yeah,
Okay, anything else on that? Carl?
Yeah, Michael, I just want to be sure that the comments I provided attempted to go to the issue of what experience are we trying to offer those folks who can't take advantage of the other 9 or 10 Mid-Coast Conservancy trails. They can't be under canopy. They can't be in a charming shaded environment. If the town wishes to create what I call a utility cartway, it's not a road, it's a utility cartway, it's the width of a vehicle. And it's not built to specifications that would normally bear a vehicle. If the town wishes to do that, then we really need to be sure to do some mitigation when we fine tune this thing in the field and come up with some experiences that look like that are representative of what other users of trails experience under canopy and shade and so on. Now, and the reason I bring this back up is because all of our ground truthing, all of our elevation survey was based on Forest Service trail accessibility guidance. And the new trail now needs new surveying in order to get anything close to the kind of percentage slope that the current application reads. So I hope we can commit to in the next 2 or 3 weeks before the bugs come out and before it gets too nasty out there to doing some resurveying and getting this thing right so you have a successful grant.
Yeah, great. I think we're all on board with getting it right and getting out there and needing to make any adjustments to represent the new reality and requests from the town. Great. Okay, so moving on to our second item, which is what we'll probably spend the most time talking about today, is response to Cindy's design. Ruben, I did receive your responses. Thank you. I sent out a kind of brief recap summary of the points that I took from them that I think we need to just put on the table sooner rather than later. There's a lot people brought up that doesn't need to be addressed immediately. And I think I would want us to sort of decide on what elements or questions we want to bring to the public. Like that's the most important thing. So if we, as a committee, are of 2 minds about something, that's a question we can bring to people, I feel. But also if we are of 1 mind about a feature, that's also something that we can bring to the public and say, we're really excited about this. I hope you are too. We can be very clear that, you know, there are multi-use courts going in on the pad, and there's a trail system that is being developed and happening. I understand that Cindy's designs did not necessarily follow or respect the topographical or restraints or construction covenants. So I don't want to get too bogged down in those details. We'll have to circle back if we want Cindy back involved in that process. But I pulled out sort of just some elements that I definitely want to talk about and clarify. One being the question of a pavilion or covered picnic area, and in relationship to a sort of more performance stage or presentation stage. That I see these things as two different elements. And that in Cindy's plan, there was differentiation. She had covered picnic areas, which essentially could be a few pavilions or 1 large pavilion, and then also space for, I forgot what she calls it. She says stage or not. Performance, right, which is closer to a stage. So like I just found this image which is more of a like performance kind of you know, where if a band came, they would want to play, right? Or if the Waldo wants to book an outdoors act, they would want to play there. So there's a lot of interesting, very simple architectural designs for something like that. But I just wanted to get that in front of you, so we can sort of imagine where something like that might go on site. So I open it all to you. Yes.
I feel like that as long as it's accounted for in the planning stage, it could be something that's phase 2 or 3, as long as there is, oh, in that space, we're holding that for when we have the funds to add a performance stage.
Mhm.
It seems like it could be further down the line, but should be considered now.
Right. And the only reason I thought we should bring it up now is because it's something that the public came back to again and again and again, is
Yeah.
that being a top feature in the surveys that we did.
I like the idea of picnic area, you know, maybe sandwiched between that and the playground, so parents can be hanging out while their kids are playing or whatever. And that's, I guess, one of the, I think, several of the concepts.
Right. So near playground, picnic area,
Yeah,
covered picnic area, pavilion, near playground.
100%.
Yep. And I'll just I'll just take notes and add to this plan as well.
I don't have a lot to say about the performance center. I think it could be cool if we put it on the downslope somewhere and used a natural hill as a seating area.
Yeah.
I've seen areas like that before that are cool. As far as pavilions go, we just talked, I think it needs to be near the playground, which is why I know there's been a little discussion about it multi-purposing as ice rink.
Yeah, what are your thoughts about that?
My thought is that we push for 2 pavilions.
Mhm.
One just for seating next to the playground. I really like Plan A.
Mhm.
It's the closest to what my vision was out of the 3. So I like the road, I like where the playground is and a pavilion back there somewhere, you know, somewhere near the playground. But as far as it multi-purposing as an ice rink, the water, I meant to call Chief Smelter today and just
Oh, yeah.
ran out of time. The hydrant is out front. The visibility is out front if you want people to see it. I think having it up on the slab where it's flat makes the most sense.
Yeah,
So I'd almost push for a second pavilion that
on slab.
doubles as ice
And
rink.
we're pretty sure the water is accessible. There's a hydrant right there.
Yeah.
Yes, Susan?
Yeah.
I strongly second that, because I've seen, has anyone seen the one in Kennebunk?
No,
I have images I could share.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's
Yeah.
a much bigger.
It's not as big as
building.
you would think.
Okay.
the ice
I'm-
rink out back is 30 by 60, so if we did like a 35 by 65 building, it's decent size, but not massive. And it would just be a post building is my thought. Like a pavilion, I guess.
But explain the differences with that building and
So,
Kennebunk.
it actually, I took pictures of it that I could share. At the end, it's built up. It almost looks like they built offices or something into the second floor of the pavilion.
Yeah,
But at the end, it does have restrooms. And in the interior space, they use it for ice skating, but then it's also pickleball, it's farmers markets, it's makers markets, community events. So it's a real gathering space that's a little more protected from the elements than a standard pavilion.
Okay.
But it has
So-
a lot of intention behind it.
yeah, no, and I think that's a great, I feel like if we went in that direction, like most of our resources would go right into that structure. And I almost feel, I think we're gonna get into this conversation about crowding versus not crowding. I know people have a lot of thoughts about that, but intuitively, I'm feeling like more like breeze and space. So a pavilion that covers just an ice rink, maybe with an overhang
Yep.
for some tables.
Yeah, well,
You know? But
yeah, could be. And in the summer, it would be a different use, there's not gonna be ice. So if it's
Right.
up near the courts, that could be the covered seating area for the pickleball players that aren't playing or,
Yes, I would be interested to
or
know,
farmers markets or whatever.
right, okay, yes,
I have the dimensions. The one in
Okay.
Kennebunk is 100 feet by 120 feet.
yeah,
that's
that's,
big.
Yeah, that one is
Yeah.
big.
Scale.
Yeah.
I have a question too.
It also falls down the list on my priorities. Like if I had to choose between a pavilion next to the playground and a pavilion that houses an ice rink, I'm picking the one next to the
I
playground
agree.
Yeah.
personally.
right,
As much as my back and shoveling an ice rink disagrees
Okay.
with that.
I'm gonna help.
So one of the things, hold on, one of the things, Marcus, I would want to get from you is just like a list of possible uses during the winter months for something like that. So like if we say to people like, we would like to put a ice rink here, sorry, during the summer months, ice rink here, other activities that could happen here. There's a pavilion would be real, that would be really great. Carl?
Yeah, I was concerned about two things. Certainly constructability, cost at the outset, and operations cost in the future. Ice rinks love a laser leveled environment, and you've already got them. So to the extent that you can put a ice facility where other people are no longer playing pickleball, no longer playing the court activities, and you have a perfectly level surface, it's going to save fabulous amounts of money up front. Whether you're going to put a pavilion on top of that feature within the court area is very unlikely. So you have some conflicts there that you need to think about.
In my head, they'd be separate.
And what was your argument for a pavilion over an ice rink again?
Shoveling.
Shovel, I don't have
Okay,
a shovel.
so just, okay,
Yeah.
right. No, I just want to be on record on everything. Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
No, you're fine.
Um,
So yeah,
Well,
in
that's-
looking
that's-
at
no, I
plan A,
know it's,
in my head on plan A, I've always said from the beginning, the tennis court and pickleball courts should not be separate. They're gonna be together.
right.
So that opens up the space, like
Mhm.
over where I'm thinking over where the tennis court is on plan A. You add an ice rink of similar size and just put a pavilion over the top of it. And you could build up the cement barriers, the foundation a little bit around the side, put a drain in it, and then we just fill it up. and
Sorry,
drain it out.
What was the location you suggested on plan A? Where the what was?
Where the tennis court is.
Yeah.
But
Oh, on
going,
the far side there.
yeah, the
Yeah.
north end.
Yeah. Okay, also, I mean, I would suggest everyone to walk out there again, if you haven't been out there, there is a lot of space on that slab in that whole area. This back to this question of like crowded or not, I mean, you go to the Y, one of these, YMCA's, like those buildings are full and crowded with multi-purpose spaces, and it really brings a certain kind of life and like movement and options and stuff. So I don't think it's an issue with like having things really right next to each other or
I know.
serving one purpose or another.
And this, I mean, the whole pad is like 5 or 10 acres of the 40-acre property, so we still have 30-ish acres of, trails and more quiet space. So
Right.
I think kind of cramming.
You know,
some stuff in
the pad is less than 2 acres. But it's
Yeah.
impressive.
there.
It's
Parking
impressive.
lot and all.
Oh, well, that's of course. But the pad, I mean, again, the opportunity there is that we have a level resource within 10 inches from stem to stern, left, right, top to bottom. It's a wonderful resource. It's a gift. It's a burden, perhaps, but to us, it's a gift.
Yeah.
We already have a level playing field to work with, and it's about 2 acres. There's a lot that can go on there. We just have to be sure as a committee, we recommend things are compatible with each other.
Right. Can we just touch on this restroom question? Because it's been brought up a few times and the public is really interested in this. Is this feasible or not anywhere near the pad? Or is this something we can't really figure out right now?
Unless we could connect it to sewer,
Which could happen
which could
eventually.
happen eventually.
Yeah,
It would have to be porta potties because we can't dig into the ground.
right.
So initially, probably it would be that anyway. phase
Yeah.
one. So.
So that's a real late phase
hopefully-
part of it.
There's an open question whether or not we could sort of repurpose the septic that's over at Haas's house, because it's far enough away from the actual site.
Mhm.
And that's a question I mean, that septic would obviously have to be rebuilt because it's been
Yeah,
dormant for so long, but if we could sort of dig it out and repurpose it to put bathrooms on top of it, that's question mark. I don't know if we can do that.
okay. But they did, if we got money to extend the sewer, that was okay by,
Yes.
so that would be the best option, but that's definitely a later phase.
Yeah.
Option. Okay.
And we're close. I mean, the sewer comes close. It would be like a
Yeah.
quarter-mile extension. So it's not, we're not talking 3 miles. We're talking. Not actually sure exactly how long, but it's a short extension that we'd have to make. So
I didn't think it was that far.
Okay, there's a few other elements we could talk about here, but any other open comments about, plans A, B, or C, or features you wanted to bring up, or questions you wanted to discuss?
Are we going over feedback on these concepts, or are we just kind of cherry picking discrepancies?
We're allowing you to say whatever you want to say about them.
Okay. My feedback in particular was about concept, I believe it was concept A. Though I loved the separation between everything, I was not a huge fan of the road idea, mostly because it runs directly alongside the playground. And we're talking about having like natural mound style playground features, which kind of creates hills and obstructions so that people have a hard time kind of seeing where their kids go. I know personally,
So
in my experience, people don't always drive.
Well, just to clarify, it's not an open road. I think it would actually be closed off almost entirely. It's simply an access point for specific events and you would not be allowed to drive through there.
Copy that. So in regards to access point for specific events, are we expecting this road to be a one-way road? Because obviously trucks towing trailers down one-way access points for event spaces aren't necessarily going to love roundabouts and limited space to turn around. That would be the just most obvious call out. Whereas in concept B, you essentially have access to the event space on both sides of the parking lot, and that could easily be done with gated access, which would give people a lot more flexibility to get in and out of that space. That would be my one note about.
Right, so I take what you're saying is about, when vehicles need to get in, say to unload or load things in the vendor area, that it's accessible and safe, but also not preventing other vehicles to cause disruption or problems. So
Totally. I mean, and in the way that the concept is drawn now, the vendor area on the roadside has, picnic areas between it. So just trying to gain an understanding of that. Seeing what the benefit of the road is, really, if it's only going to be open for vendor access and it's already limiting vendor access.
So, I mean, I'll give my 2 cents. I love the road idea. And I think it should be a one-way road and open all the time.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I've been in parks before where they have one-way traffic and it really, you don't have people backing up a whole lot or cars going opposite directions. It keeps things flowing in the same direction. It seems to work really well. I understand your points about the near the playground. The driveway we have next to our playground in town is similar. There's no mounds in the way though, so I understand that. Maybe just a fence or something that separates it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear
and
mountains,
then-
I think of hills. Do you
Yeah.
hear it the same way?
I understand what you're saying, and it makes sense. And I also thought about like, I know there's limited space there, but maybe just widening the road there. So that at that point, there's vendor parking back there. And then there's almost like playground parking if events aren't happening. So you could just have cars pull off next to the playground, as long as there's room for
I see
traffic
what
to
you mean.
keep going, was kind of my thought. But I understand your point. You're not wrong. So.
Yeah, I mean, I have young children and I know they kind of get in every crevice of every place. Having a playground with limited view of the kids alongside a one-way road with, obviously we're not going to have police or we're not going to have like park rangers kind of managing this space. People don't always make the best decisions on those speedy in and outs.
Couple speed bumps.
And that's something that I certainly would be cautious of with my children in that space.
Okay, Susan?
So the playground itself, I imagine it will also have a fence around it. Especially, and playgrounds are often designed for 5 to 12-year-olds.
Mhm.
And then there's often a playground for younger children. So most playgrounds that I've seen have a fence. So, I mean, it's just something to think about. Have we considered whether this will have a fence? If it does have a fence, that reduces the risk, obviously, because I'm an early childhood educator. I feel what you're saying. Parents need to be able to relax without feeling like they're nervous about an adjacent feature. But I think there are a lot of options here to make sure that parents can have the safe and confident feeling that they have, because you want a margin of error wherever children are involved. We need,
Sure, that makes sense.
yeah,
I'm just trying to see the benefit of having a through road, in
Well-
relation to the risks.
I mean, I also imagine it as kind of like a, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like a yellow brick road, just like a path that's like marked as in a, let's walk this way through this area, not like a, you know, multi-lane highway, of course,
Yeah.
but like there's just like a larger kind of sort of what we've been talking about with the other trails, except it would be concrete. So I was seeing it as more about creating a kind of village-like environment within the experience as a whole. So I could just imagine like, let's line up along the road. Let's walk from this side to this side across through the road, right? Because you're going to have to create pathways through all these elements anyways. And this, again, if you haven't walked the site, you should walk the site. It's like already going through an area that is at some points only is wide enough for a road. There's really nothing else to put there but a larger trail, so to speak.
I guess
Yeah,
what I'm
Michael?
imagining is this event space, we're trying to create more event spaces. Maybe they're not all at the daytime. Maybe we have some night events. I know that I've been to some, movie night events here in Waldeboro, and we get pretty dark and kids run around, and having an access road, I think, is a concern unless it's well lit, unless people have some strict rules around driving through. Putting it directly next to a playground just seems like we're kind of asking for trouble. But if you feel like the benefits outweigh the risks, then I can only have my voice in this.
Well, I'm recording everything that you're saying. So yes, Carl.
So in the 3 parks we built in Kent County, we had what we called utility cartways. The utility cartway is the width of a vehicle plus a little bit of shy distance left and right. Never enough room for people to be active pedestrians on either side. They were always locked, and they were always 2 ways. But they were 2 ways for our purposes, so that while every playground was fenced, every utility cartway within a park was gated. The public never had an opportunity to send their kids into traffic. So between the fence and the designated use and the designated closure of a one-way facility like that, I don't see children being at risk. But this is all about the weeds that
Yeah.
define how you build a park.
So
Okay.
you're saying, Carl, that there's limited access because of the fencing between the road and, one side or the other? And if so, how do people get from one side or the other?
Well, that's because you're asking a question if the road is in operation.
In,
But if it's
reg- in the analogy, in the situation where the road is in operation.
Yeah, my feeling is I don't think that on a daily basis that gate was open in any of our parks more than about half an hour a day. And that's only when operations vehicles were coming and going.
Okay, so it sounds like there's different ways to think about the use of this road, but we can't make any decisions right now because it really resides on what other elements might be immediately around that structure. Yes, Janet?
Well, I was gonna actually echo Ruben. I questioned it from the beginning, the only reason I could see having it is if it's closed generally, except allow vendors or operations and not just have a throughway for traffic, because it changes the whole feel. It's supposed to be pedestrian oriented, at least I'm assuming the park is vehicle oriented. So, and I also thought we talked about it would be covered with like grass. It'd be more like so it would grade, but maybe that, some reason I remember that happened.
Where the road is?
Yeah, versus just
Oh.
paved, because it just, to me, it looks like a road versus in the middle of what we want to be sort of a spacious green space for people. So I echo that. If it's open, I feel like that would really detract from the value of the park, particularly for children.
Okay,
So my 2 cents.
so let's move on from this because we only have 20 more minutes left. Can we talk about the play a little bit? I think people had some questions about that. I would just say that we were interested in introducing natural play features throughout the park area, so not simply on this concrete pad area, but that there are designated playground type spots here that could incorporate more innovative nature-based play, as well as some more I don't know what you'd say, customary elements. So do either Marcus or Susan want to speak on how you imagine the play happening here, specifically around the pad or in these areas?
You want to go first?
I don't have a whole lot. No, we have a, I would call a traditional playground already in town,
Yeah.
so I'm open to the different, natural features. My biggest concern with natural features that I've mentioned in the past is life expectancy and maintenance, where at the moment, I'm a one-man show.
Yeah.
But to sidetrack from that a little bit, the Public Works has been helping. They have been down there cleaning up the pad for the last week, and it looks really good. They've been doing a lot of work down there.
Right.
So just wanted to get that out there. Seemed like the best time right now.
Yeah.
So,
I completely agree. We have an opportunity here to create something that isn't like the fixed structure climbers that we're used to seeing in a traditional playground. And there are different companies that do this. We would definitely need a professional design to also blend the playground with the rest of the park. And there are so many different features that could go in here. And this even if this committee were just creating a playground, we would have a lot of work to do. Because the thinking about play is really trying to understand how children play, and they play in many different ways. And when we put the child first, like, how do they play? What engages them for the longest periods of time? What benefits their health and well-being the most? Being as close to green space as possible is one of them. Having a lot of things to manipulate is another one. So some of the play features could take off down the trails and be pocketed in the woods and off the trails, but the playground itself could have really innovative features that none of us have ever seen before. And it can also, I've seen many playgrounds designed that echo the features of the town. And
Yes, right.
yeah, so they mimic like maybe the five-masted schooner or things
Right.
like that. But the idea is to keep it as open-ended as possible so that we, the adults, aren't making up our minds about how children play. So
Do we see the potential that there's some ground features on the concrete slab? Would there be some room for that as well?
there's probably room.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I know it's a different discussion, but I just
Yeah.
want to sort of
Yeah.
say like
I don't-
that having a play feature or two in different areas, not all just in one area.
yeah, definitely.
Would be nice if people are at the courts or just on, and it's closer to their activity at any one moment.
Michael,
Yeah,
I just want to follow up Susan talking for a moment there. As somebody who only built playgrounds based on the Consumer Product Safety Commission and no other consideration, she knows how far that is from how children actually want to play in the world. With the construction of an accessible barrier-free trail, which is fairly short, it's only about 2,500 feet. That's our opportunity to bring children another couple hundred yards into the woods, deeply embedded in a safe environment, in some
Yes.
really charming nature-centered environments. And I hope we kind of step away from the active courts a little bit with that recreation that Susan would like to design for us.
yes,
That
we're
would be my
definitely,
hope.
yes, we'll definitely be doing something like that or thinking along those lines. Okay. Yes,
I was under the assumption, again, maybe wrong, but I know over the years, we've talked about covering some sections with bentonite, so we're not just left with a pad. So, I could see expanding some of those on the pad itself. So it's not just concrete, to give us options to intersperse play if we wanted to try that. I don't know if that's
did you
feasible
ever,
or not,
Marcus, thoughts about bentonite
or some sort of.
No,
pad.
I mean, I mean, as long as the courts are there, if whatever space is left with, what the
Yeah,
committee wants to
yeah.
do. I mean, again, looking at Plan A, I don't think a parking lot of that size on the south side is.
Yeah, I don't
Necessary.
think we should put parking on the slab.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
If we're not gonna do the road, there definitely needs to be parking on that side of the property. But I think it can be smaller and pushed south. And then you can move the courts that way, and there could be space, but it just
Yeah,
depends
I hear
on,
you.
I don't know the engineering of the slope and getting bentonite up on top and.
Yeah.
all
Michael
that.
Fair was a proponent of that at one point. I mean, it would be another thing
Yeah,
to
right,
pay for,
right,
but at the same time, like if you want to have vegetation growing or whatever, we need to hopefully bring some dirt onto this so that it's not just concrete.
yeah. Okay. Uh,
Janet,
Yeah,
because you just mentioned that again, remember we are inheriting 400 cubic yards of sod and topsoil from the barrier-free construction project. And I had always hoped that that was going to be the material we would feather off from the cap all the way around its perimeter for the purpose of planting. So we do have very ample areas that we're going to be able to plant some sort of hardy tree. I'm a big fan of northern white cedars, but because they're evergreen and they're tough. But we are going to have the substrate for you to grow trees in.
Okay, so we have 15 minutes left. Next steps. So I've been, keeping notes, and it's pretty clear that we like certain elements, but there are questions around those elements as well. I can work with Kate and see if we want to go back to Cindy, whether that makes sense, so that we can show something flashier to the public. That would be the reason, is to show something flashy,
Yeah.
essentially, so that if we do any kind of community discussion or tabling election day or Waldeboro Day, that's what you'd be able to show. Are we in favor of that? I mean, is that something that we think is really important? That would pay off?
I think we need, you raised your hand. Good
Oh.
job.
I think possibly an intermediate step would be to have, my understanding is this is the first iteration.
Yeah.
And the process is typically where she would then gather this kind of input that we're discussing right now, create a second design,
Right.
and then and then a third where we maybe have a final, but I think it's at the second stage where you have a few different designs like we have now, but they're closer to what
Right.
this group wants,
Yeah.
reflecting the feedback. Then you take them to have a community design charrette, invite them, have the pictures posted, that then the community can offer feedback on a now narrowed version of
Yeah.
what's possible.
So that would be the best way to do it. That's also the expensive way to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
So it's a question of funding, and we're gonna look into the National Park Service and just see if the program is gonna be
Yeah.
continuing and whether that's an option. So I'm just trying to think like, what's the short-term best version? And it might just be one other iteration to get in front of a larger group of public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I piggyback that one?
Yeah.
So in that option, there are also a lot of different ways to involve public input by, instead of maybe the design is more decided by this group, but like where things will go, but then they can contribute ideas to what those features might look like,
Yes, right.
children included.
Right, so you could have like 4 different pictures of different kinds of stages or whatever it is. I like that one. Yeah, that would be ideal. Yeah, Marcus?
Yeah, I like the idea of having one nice design. My question is, are these 3 designs she gave us close enough to show to the public to like say, do you like this element? Do you like that element? Is there something that's missing from here? I had somebody, a resident today, ask me about a splash pad in town.
Yeah.
I know that's something we've talked about in the past.
Yeah, my issue with that would just be, I think it does offer everything we're talking about, but I think people might get caught up in the details of what we're not talking about and keep saying like, well, why would that go there and this go there?
Yeah.
So.
I think the idea is to get, what do they want in the park though? I don't think.
But we did do the survey. We do
Yeah.
have the data, and the survey also said skate park,
Yeah.
whether it was one person who wrote it again and again, but definitely it was written in different ways. So they did a
Yeah.
really good job of disguising themselves. It was just one person, but that's a really popular thing. And as a committee, we haven't talked about it. So that's a problem,
So what are we going, like, we're trying to do something at, the elections or Waldeboro Day or whatever we're
Right.
gonna do. What are we trying to get out of that then? Because if we already have the amenities that we've already figured out what they want. Are we just coming up with one design or?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was,
You know.
I agree that I'm sort of unclear about what we would be getting, other than simply keeping the conversation going and telling people this is where we are right now and being public about it. Kate?
Would it be worth revisiting the survey data? To look in light of Cindy's plans and sort of doing some of that as a committee ourselves, to then be able to at least, at Waldeboro Day, say, here were the top 5 elements that came out in your survey. here's what they look like, in theory. And then just, I think part of
Yeah.
the purpose of Waldeboro Day is to also show people that there is work happening. You can't see it out on the pad yet,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of work happening in this room. And so we want them to kind of be excited about it.
So basically summary with like, based on your feedback and our discussion, this is what we came up with, and presentation, knowing that people are gonna be giving you feedback no matter what.
Right.
And you'll take that in. Now, Ruben, you mentioned something about developing a survey.
I just put together just to show how easy it is to actually collect the data. I didn't know that you guys had already collected some data on ideas. I think if you are going to consolidate it all into one iteration to show the public, it might be worth revisiting that earlier data. But yes, in the link, there's just a basic Survey Monkey thing. I
Right.
have an account, and it's easy to just, get feedback from 5,000 people. You can just post it anywhere, really. Now, what changes is just like the questions and what we're asking, and showing the different iterations of the designs. And we can kind of manipulate it a little bit so that, I mean, maybe manipulate's not the word. We can kind of control the response output a little bit, so it's a little more focused and less, just general big picture responses. We could just get feedback on design components or like the importance of certain design components.
Right. So what I'm
But
taking
if you're
from what-
saying we already have that data, it might make
Well,
sense.
we have an open-ended questions. Now that we're more focused, possibly we could, whatever we decide to present at a table at Waldeboro Day, could then have an online version with a survey that's much more directed. That would be, I think, along the lines of what you're suggesting. Janet?
Yeah, what I was suggesting was just an online ability. It's pretty
Yeah.
easy to get a lot of community feedback on some of the Facebook groups here in town. Waldeboro Day, though it's very popular for some people, not the entire community doesn't necessarily come out to that to weigh in.
So the first survey was, I think, Survey Monkey, and I forget how many 100 plus or whatever responses we got. It was quite a few, or maybe a couple hundred. And I do think going back to it is a great idea, though. And I do think this actually captures the top elements we've been talking about all along.
Yeah, Cindy worked with the survey data.
Right. So I feel like one, looking at her 3 options to me was kind of confusing.
Yeah.
So I can
Yeah, I
see.
didn't know what we're trying to get from the
No,
public.
yeah.
If we're like,
Yeah,
like if we just take one, like, I guess we're at the point where we're going to, but if we're just gonna take one design and say, here, public, what do you think of this park? Like, it doesn't give them options. It just says, hey, we came up with
I
this.
think we need to break it out, like,
But if we've already done
A
that,
draft, and
then,
this is,
then,
Yeah.
yeah, we go to one.
Yeah,
Maybe that's
right.
the next step, is to
yeah.
revisit our survey results.
yeah, and then,
Make
but
adjustments.
make that, whatever the one version we present, saying that this is a, in motion,
draft.
Yeah.
like deliberative, process. What do you think now? You've had 6 months off from thinking about it. Maybe your opinion's changed. Yeah, Susan?
Do we know how many children filled out surveys?
Not.
There may have been a question about age, and certainly it wasn't the highest percentage.
So if we have
Probably
time
their
to do
parents.
this,
Yeah,
I would suggest a massive campaign to have children fill out surveys.
That would surely need.
yeah,
Teenagers, young people especially, are underrepresented. Children are underrepresented in most communities as
Yeah.
human beings. And if this is an intergenerational park, I think we should have a minimum percentage of surveys that are children themselves saying, this is what I want in my community.
okay. I wrote that down. I think if we do that, we have to be very specific about the questions we're asking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So we need to have done our work in terms of consolidating and what we want to show and offer.
And I
Yeah.
could pretend, like, I think it would be worth us showing up at a school.
Yes.
And even having a 15-minute assembly and, seeing if the kids have the next 15 minutes to fill it out. And we just get a wave of input from the young people themselves.
Yes.
That could also be the focus of Waldeboro Day, is if we had posters with photos of different elements.
Yeah, a lot of kids there.
Especially no words, like if we could have photos of different elements that we might have in the park with a sort of draft plan of the park.
Yeah.
on bigger paper.
Yep,
And then have kids, sticker vote or
Yep.
whatever it is.
yep,
And have that up somewhere that people could,
agreed.
and have, if you're a kid, you get a red sticker, and if you're an adult, you get a blue sticker, and, maybe kids get 5 or 6 stickers and the adults only get 1.
Okay, so we just have 5 minutes left. So, other things I wanted to say was, yes, thank you for all being very, encouraging and loose around this discussion, because I know it's easy to get caught up in the details of the restraints. But I think those constraints will, help us clarify. I just want to keep this as generative and open and encouraging as possible. At this point, I would also again encourage you to walk down to the site if you haven't been down recently. As Marcus mentioned, Public Works has done a phenomenal ongoing job of clearing the site. So it really does already feel more welcoming. Like you could just walk on it and be like, wow, I could imagine any number of things happening here. So tell people that you see to, like, oh, have you been by there recently? They're actually clearing it, go walk down. What do you imagine to be there? And that, Cindy's designs, we're not supposed to be exact, we're supposed to be generative, as we've been talking about. So all these items are still really loose. Nothing is definite. And for example, this like stage feature, I was there walking today on the site, and I was thinking, speaking to Marcus's point about taking advantage of a natural slope for where an audience sits. Certainly this far back northwest corner does actually slope down. So it does make some sense to put something there that people are looking at. But also we don't have the larger map here, but from the hostess house walking down towards the water, it's also a significant slope. And there's room like off to one side, to your left side as you're walking down the trails that we're putting in, even for a smaller stage like this. So you can have a whole classroom world over there where there's an activity that's happening on the stage as well as exploratory activities, right? So maybe the stage is over there in the field and not on the concrete pad, right? So I think we need to be really open about the possibilities here, and that discussion can continue to happen. Any closing comments?
Just
Yep.
one. So Marcus, when you were saying presenting one design, but then having we could talk about features being more of the input. I feel like people are less, this is just my assumption, that the communities may be less about where things go, more about what's in it.
Yeah.
So
That was my point.
Yeah,
Like,
right?
they
Is that
don't-
what your point?
They don't care about the 3 different designs
Right.
about, oh, this one has this here or there. As long as it has it, they're gonna be happy.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
and
That's a good point.
so that was my point. We give them the options so that they can see the different options and see the possible amenities. But it wasn't really about the design.
Yeah.
It was just about what could be. And maybe we just have a list like, hey, this is the design we came up with. Here's a list of 100 other amenities that could go in here. What do you think we should have? But
You must have, yeah.
to that point, we already did the survey, so we've kind of already done that.
Yeah, we'll narrow it a little bit. Yes, Jeff.
Is that gonna be predicated on what survey we had done before?
Yes, I think that's
at
what-
least,
I think
yeah.
it has to,
yeah,
it's
I
not-
mean,
people don't think it's just been.
no, right.
Right.
No, we'll make it very clear. Based on your suggestions that went to a designer, we came up with this. This is what you wanted. How do you feel about it now, right? Okay, any closing comments, Ruben or Carl?
No, I just want to thank everybody for their time and their expertise. There's a lot of great minds bringing a lot of info to the table here, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Motion to adjourn. Next meeting is May 4th at 5.
At 5. That's from me. All the rest of you are on.
All right,
That's from
thank
me.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kate,
I don't know what to.
finish your.
I got it.